Sahana bhavatu, sahano bhunaktu, saha viryam karavavahe, tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, the topic that we're looking at in chapter 8, beyond the manifest and the unmanifest world. Brahman is beyond the manifest and the unmanifest world. So that means beyond everything that you can possibly conceive, which there are many things in the world you can't conceive. So it's beyond that even. So it's perhaps to step back every now and again and examine what's going on around you, that constant flux of change. So here in this topic, it's putting forward that it's beyond that birth and death, beyond that cycle. So the Mahatmas who've got to beyond that birth and death, he was talking about in verse 15. And then he was talking in 16, that idea of what we generally go after in this world. We're in a construct of creation, preservation, and destruction. So Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, these are the names, God names, gods plural. So they're not the one truth. It's all the pluralistic values of the creation. And the best part of the creation, the heavens of the heavens, above all heavens that you could possibly conceive, is something called Brahmaloka. Brahmaloka is where you're gaining the effects of your meritorious deeds, know it or not, and you have to go through that pleasure on earth. And if you're a sadhak, a spiritual aspirant, you'll think twice about getting involved in that. Though what you do, prefix to getting into Brahmaloka, is really important. So it's like going on, you planned and you planned and you planned for, some people plan years on end for that great grand holiday to somewhere magnificent on the planet. And someday it'll be off the planet, perhaps, if you want it or not. To have that holiday. And when you go on that holiday, you have such a grand experience. And I know people around me, people who have grown up with me, what their lives are about, a bit more conventional than what we're doing here. What their lives are about is having grander and grander. Now they've got to a stage of comforts in their material life. They now want that experience, grander and grander experiences of life. They feel that their life is done in their work, and they want to experience what they should be enjoying in life. So they want Brahmaloka. They're living for Brahmaloka. But here in the verse, it's stating very clearly, Brahmaloka is just like that grandest of holidays, but you've got to come back to all that you haven't worked out. There's a point of return after your grand pleasures, back to dealing with what you've got to deal with in your perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. So that's the thing to know. If you want that grand experience, you can get it. There's ways and methods of going for it. And maybe by default you get it. But within it, or or aiming for it, it's asking you to understand it's finite. And the individual's mission in life is not to seek just finite, even if it's the best of heavens, more than seventh heaven, as one says. It's something beyond that you seek, and won't rest content till you get it. So we may as well get on to that path of something bigger, if you can understand it. It's a bit more. So Brahmaloka is quite a nice state, but that's not what you're after. You don't want a short-term holiday. In fact, traditionally the word holiday, what's holiday mean? What was it initially punctuating?
Holy day.
Holy day. Meaning, because we're so preoccupied with the worldly things, we don't get sight of the bigger things. License is given to take out time to focus and reflect on something more grander, holy, beyond the remits of the worldly cause and effects. Holiday. But everything about holiday nowadays has got a perspective of return from Brahmaloka, which is, it's supposed to take you out of Brahmaloka. It's got a perspective of return from Brahmaloka. So just to bear in mind, so there's a state of birth and death going on in Brahmaloka, but the Mahatmas who reached that state beyond of realization, there's no birth or death. They've transcended that finite value of this worldly existence. So it's up to us. So if we have a particular mind, we have student's mind it will be. If we have business mind it will be. We choose the sort of vasanas we're entertaining, those what manifests. We choose the direction of them. So we had a question. What's the question? Anybody?
A question to begin the class. Are vasanas more fundamental to understand than Brahmaloka or reincarnation?
Anybody? Nishi?
I would say yes, because our vasanas or desires we are fully aware of right now, whereas Brahmaloka is probably beyond our understanding and conception, and so is reincarnation.
Okay. Anybody want to add to that? Thanks. Ash, go ahead.
Namaste. Just to add that, actually similar to what Nishi said, I guess vasanas are more in the present, whereas I view the Brahmaloka and reincarnation as something way beyond, in the future, or like she said, you can't comprehend, but yeah, something that's not in the present. The thing that you can actually do something about in the present is this, vasanas.
Okay. Thanks. Vidya?
I agree with what both of them have said, but primarily vasanas are the root cause of everything, of our existence. So they make us or mar us. So understanding them and having a control, or rather developing better vasanas, whereby we develop our intellect, is better, because then that is the root cause for our trajectory towards Brahmaloka or beyond that to liberation. So address the root cause of how we go on that journey of self-realization.
Okay, good. Anybody, anything further? Add on? Okay. Babita?
Yeah, so yeah, similar to what everybody said is at the moment, Brahmaloka and reincarnation is just a theory. There is no scientific proof of it. There's a belief more than a concrete proof of it. But Vasana, we see, we know of it, and we experience it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Thanks. Mm-hmm.
I would agree with everything that everyone has said so far. Just an extra point that touches me, that our vasanas are a door into divinity. They are our insight into the divine self, which is a very different view of desires than you find in many other spiritual movements. So our vasanas are really interesting because of this way exhausting them leads to the self, but they themselves are a form of divinity.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One last one. Okay. Okay. So, just in the lines of what you've all said, vasanas are unmanifest forms, and when they come into manifestation, they're your desires. They're your inherent nature. Theory of reincarnation, we project, as everybody has said, so we don't know what that is for sure, but we make an intelligent projection from the basis of cause and effect. Something can't go into nothing, so we make a whole hypothesis there. Brahmaloka, it sounds from what you're all saying that Brahmaloka is somewhere where you're not going to reach. It doesn't exist. But it's actually saying it's your most heavenly state. The best of pleasures. So hopefully you get a taste of that, but you don't get stuck with it. That's the idea. Hopefully life is like Brahmaloka. So you've got to cultivate that in yourself. But you don't get stuck with staying with those pleasures and then back again. So you've got to have a different perspective in mind. And vasanas are key to how, when they manifest, you have control over what you're going to do with them. When they're in their unmanifest form, that's vasanas, unmanifest thoughts, you can't really do much about it. You're projected into an environment and you've got to tackle it as it manifests. But as things recur and you recognize it, you recognize your nature, you can deal with that. And that's the beauty of the philosophy, that it's giving you license to get to your divinity by mastering those vasanas and fulfilling them, which is our prerogative as a human being. If we don't, we go through cycles of either Brahmaloka and back again, and cycles of birth and death, which indicates reincarnation. Perhaps the theory. Anybody, anything before we go ahead? Okay. 17.
Sahasrayugaparyantam aharatyat brahmano viduhu ratrim yugasahasrantam devo ratravido jana.
Okay. Ash, if you could read the verse.
Okay, verse 17. The people who know the day of Brahma, which ends in 1,000 yugas, ages, and the night, which ends in 1,000 yugas, ages, they know day and night.
Okay. So this verse is talking about the manifestation and the unmanifest at the it's actually talking about the ages in some sense. So Brahma, the Lord of creation, we've understood is transient, finite. We're not talking about, remember, don't make this mistake, we're not talking about Brahman, which is infinite. That divinity has no personality, is not in the remit in terms of it's that which backs Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, the trinity of creation, preservation, destruction. So governing the world. So gods, when it's plural, the creation of Brahma, Brahma is a creation, Brahmaloka. So here is putting forward. So actually, just for speak's sake, when you're having a good time, time goes fast. When it's not so great, it goes slower. You may have heard the word Ashoka in a worldly sense. Shoka is sorrow. Ashoka is no sorrow. So the best you can get is Brahmaloka, no sorrow in a worldly sense. But in terms of what we're after is something more than that. But it's trying to put forward how it manifests and is how it goes back, time, our time-space causation, as it were. So backing that is the real self, which is beyond all of this. So there are, in our universe of time, space, and causation, there is said to be 4 yugas, which are here in the book. It's listed as Sattva Yuga. Can anybody guess what Sattva Yuga is? What's Sattva Yuga?
Is it like the pure?
The pure.
Best.
So it's, can you imagine a society, a world which is just sattvic? Very difficult to see the opposites of goods and bads because it's all sattvic. Remember, we were talking about sattva in terms of no, it wasn't this class, it was Monday, a brahmana in the caste system. Sattvic person. Everything's looked after. The interest of the whole, that's what the brahmana does, looks at the interest of the whole. Giving and taking, the distribution of resources is looked after, it's shared. So can you imagine there's no need for social work, you no need to, there's no poor as such. It's all spread and shared. Can you imagine that? It seems inconceivable in the age that we're in. Pure. Treta Yuga, virtuous, and one sin. So it's like the purity percolates, it gets, it's percolated with the negative slowly throughout the ages, the opposite. So Treta Yuga was still relatively very pure. And then there's Dwapara Yuga. Sin and virtue are equal. And guess what? Guess where we are right now? We're set to be in what? Anybody must have heard these words now and again.
Kali Yuga.
Kali Yuga. What does that mean? Where the predominance is not great. It's
But the
negative.
battle is within oneself.
So there's constant, there's not that refinement. It's like a destruction. It's predominant. So who can say, if you're all peaceful and happy in life, who can actually say that nowadays? Unless you evolve yourself spiritually, which is out of this remit. But in the worldly sense, the pairs of opposites are stark. In actual fact, to find good is like finding divinity. So the cycle goes on. After one cosmic day and one cosmic night. So it means, all it means is the words manifest and unmanifest. Now, unmanifest sounds scary, but this is just a cycle. Like we have manifest day right now, and towards the end of the day, it becomes unmanifest night. It's a night. So this is one day of Brahma, the creator. That's how it's put, the mythology of it. So it only takes, we come to the stage where it only takes one, we're coming to the stage, it takes one to press the button and we'll all be finished off. Can't help it, we're in that state. So you better get onto your spiritual development. There's no need to worry there. It won't be probably in our time. Who knows? What it's getting at is our experiences are relative. So you've got to try and understand that at the subtle level. So this is just like an objective calculation to get us to understand a subjective truth. You know, the manifest and manifest, the time span, what's going on. So everything can be replaced. It's transient, comes and goes. But the self can't be replaced. That's what it's trying to get at. So there's 100 days. So those days of Brahma are 1,000 yugas. And the night is 1,000 yugas. So the gods, creation of Brahmaloka. So the whole thing it's trying to get across is don't waste time in desire-ridden activities, because you only have to reap the benefits of your merits and you're still stuck in the yugas. So you've got to get out of that. Let's read it.
Can I just ask a question? Are these yugas within us or are they externally, like the world?
Both. So the timings are like they're calculation. Yeah, somebody's calculated externally, but the manifestation and manifestation right now, we are in this class, we're manifesting the vasanas, which are to be in the class. You leave this classroom, you'll be manifesting vasanas to be in something else. So those vasanas go back to being unmanifest unless you continue the study of this knowledge or reflecting on it, then they continue. So it's manifest, unmanifest. So the whole of the world is in us, manifest, unmanifest. The world itself is night and day, if you get what I mean. The universe itself has that quality of manifest and manifest.
So we have
creation
that
creation and destruction. So we're always creating and destructing within ourselves as equally as outside is going on. We have the opportunity to get over that in terms of directing our vasanas.
And so just to, Ash's question is really good. Just to clarify it, could I be in Kali Yuga and you be in Satya Yuga? Is it a social construct or an individual one?
So the construct is a universal construct. So there's the Mahat is Kali Yuga, but you can get out of it. That's your capacity. It's probably more trickier to get out of than if you were in Sattva Yuga, because you already refined your vasanas to that state. So either one of us could have good or bad vasanas. In Kali Yuga, there's a potential for more negative vasanas to be manifesting, but the idea is to get out of it. So you could have positive vasanas, I could have negative vasanas, more so, vice versa. They are influenced by the Mahat, which is outside. But when you raise yourself, you are not influenced by the Mahat because you're drawing from within, not being influenced from your environment. So that's the beauty. So it's part and parcel because the mind's a projection of your own world. There's no world for a realized person.
But I've heard people say we are in an age of Kali Yuga. That
Yeah.
suggests it's all of us are in that.
Yeah.
So it is a social construct. It's not me personally.
Yeah. So the parameters for each individual is probably going to be grosser than subtler. So you see less in the age of Kali Yuga, you'll see less brahmanas, and they'll be feeling a need for more of the others than the brahmanas. Because you think that's what it's all about. But in the age of Sattva Yuga, you probably don't want to be in the low categories. But yet, if you stop thinking to get out of that, perhaps the change occurs. It's an external construct which relates to also your internal being. You're in it, I'm in it, because of certain vasanas are there, manifest. The idea is to get out of it.
So is it similar to the sattvic, tamasic and rajasic, so the natures that we have? Does that tie in with this?
Yes, so Sattva Yuga would be predominantly sattvic in the universe. The universe is that way. And so forth. Kali Yuga is more tamas. But the idea is to get out of that. Whichever
this
you
is
go.
put time against it. It's like put
In a
time into
sense.
the equation.
Yeah, it gives a sort of comprehension. The reality is you forget about it. Just get on to refining your guna of sattva. Whether you're in Kali or Sattva Yuga, it doesn't make any difference. If you're a spiritual aspirant, really. But it's giving an explanation of how things might be. That's all. It's also giving an indication, it doesn't have to be as that.
Can I read? Sorry. Thank you. Yuga means an aeon, a vast age. In this verse, the word yuga stands for a celestial yuga known as a Mahayug or Katiryug. It consists of 4 earthly yugas. The 4 earthly yugas and their durations reckoned in terrestrial years are as follows. Satya Yug, 1,728,000 terrestrial years. Treta Yug, 1,296,000 terrestrial years. Drevya Yug, 864,000 terrestrial years. Kali Yug, 432,000 terrestrial years. And Mahayug, 4,320,000 terrestrial years.
In fact, some people have calculated we're in that we've come to that stage. So, continue.
1,000 Mahayugs equal to 432 crore, which is 4.32 billion terrestrial years, make one day of Lord Brahma in heaven. An equal duration makes a night of Brahma as well. The day of Brahma is known as Kalpa or Sarga, period of creation, and his night as Pralaya, period of dissolution. 30 such days and nights taken together make 1 month of Brahma, and 12 such months his year. 100 such years constitute the lifespan of Brahma. Lord Brahma's lifespan, fixed at that stupendous figure, indicates that even his existence is finite, limited, transient. Knowing the transient character of even Brahmaloka, heaven, man begins to realize the fleeting and perishable nature of this world. He understands the relative insignificance of human existence, the absurdity of getting attached to or indulging in this frivolous world. The verse thus helps the seeker to elevate himself to a high philosophic vision of the cosmic design and that which transcends it all, the Supreme Brahman.
So that's what it's trying to get at. Just avoid getting caught up in your desires because they're finite. Keep focused on something bigger. So now the next verse is going to talk about the microcosmic level, you as the individual in this manifest and unmanifest. Let's go 18.
Avyaktadyaktayaः sarva prabhavanti aharagame ratriyagame praliyante tatraiva vyakta samyake.
Sam, if you could read the verse. Thank you.
Verse 18. At the approach of day, all the manifested stream forth from the unmanifested. At the approach of night, they dissolve there only, in what is called the unmanifested.
So the approach of day is manifest, the approach of night unmanifest, the cycle of our life, our day, plan of nature, avyakta. You go to sleep, you wake up. You go to sleep, you wake up. There's a constant cycle going on in us. You know, if you don't have any sleep, you don't feel so good. If you've had sleep, you feel better. So the whole thing becomes unmanifest when you go to sleep. You don't know what's going on in this world when you're asleep. Actually, you might not know what's going on in this world. Even if you're physically here, you might be asleep. Who knows? You might be awake. But what happens is when you sleep and you get up, when you go to bed and you wake up, are you the same person? So what happens is when something's unmanifest, it goes into that unmanifest form. And then when you wake up as you, whoever you are, Sam, Carol, whoever, when you wake up, you're the same person. Maybe a few things have changed, but you're the same person. That inherent personality is still there. So in the unmanifest state, it's like the seeds. It goes back into a seed form. So it doesn't get destroyed. Your individuality doesn't get destroyed when you go to sleep. And it fructifies when you wake up. So you go to sleep as a mathematician, you wake up as a mathematician. It doesn't happen that you wake up as a, well, maybe mathematician could be a magician, but you don't wake up as something totally alien to what your nature is. So everybody's got that individuality going on, manifest, unmanifest. So he's talking now individually, and next verse he's talking like collectively. So at the macrocosmic level. So 4.32 billion years is one day of Brahma. It's a long, long, long time. That manifests, meaning the whole thing is manifest. And then it's going to go to the night of Brahma, that destruction, for another period of time as such. So in effect, we're still existing. We're still on this planet. Don't have to worry about it. We're not wiped off yet. But then it's like we start from scratch again. So can you imagine? There's nothing there. And you start from scratch. You're one of the few survivors and you come back. You start from Stone Age. You don't have any possessions as such. You start from the stone, rubbing two pieces of stone together to make fire, to warm. You start to grow your food or whatever. Then hundreds of years later, you start to have better quality of water, you live longer, you have better quality of life in terms of your body. People are living longer these days. Slowly you get computers. We can talk from not being in the same room. Remember Sanjay was talking from Hastinapur about Kurukshetra, different places. Well, we're talking right now from wherever you are to wherever I am. The computers allowing us, etc. And then we get better weaponry and vehicles. And it only takes a few, and we go back to pralaya, back to destruction. Goes for manifest to unmanifest. That's what is happening at the individual level, also the collective now. Let's read it. Ash.
Sorry, I find the terrestrial years really confusing. I'm still trying to get my head into what it means. But would it be referring to evolution then? Is that like the whole universe and the Earth evolution? Is that what it?
Well, we have the opportunity to evolve in terms of Vedanta. The philosophy is that the individual evolves, everything evolves. So it's not looking outward in terms of the world evolves, and the world does evolve, in fact. The whole idea is to evolve your supper, and the word supper should follow, as it were.
Okay, now that makes sense then. And it's good to see then Kali Yuga is the smallest amount of years that you have to sit in.
I mean, really, it's given this as such, but you don't have to get attached to it. You just have to understand you're on a journey of spiritual evolution to get out of the pairs of opposites. And at some point, it's kind of putting inevitably anything that's finite has a time span on it. It's created, it's also got to dissolve, just as oneself. Guarantee is death, nothing else. So you better live well to make sure you get out of physical death. That's what he's trying to get at. Okay. Let's read.
Verse 18 and 19 describe the endless cycle of creation and dissolution. Creation of the manifested world and the dissolution into the unmanifest. Verse 18 suggests a reference to the microcosm and verse 19 to the macrocosm. Beings constantly stream forth into their waking state of consciousness at daybreak. They return to sleep at nightfall. Their personalities remain unmanifested during night. Again, they burst forth into manifestation during day. This chain of the manifest and unmanifest continues in an endless cycle. The inherent nature, the innate quality of an individual known as vasanas are extremely subtle. The sense organs cannot perceive them. The mind cannot feel them, nor can the intellect comprehend them. Vasanas remain in their unmanifest state when the individual sleeps. When awake, the vasanas burst forth into manifestation. This process repeats itself until the vasanas get exhausted completely. Consider a musician going to sleep. All his music qualities fold up during sleep. On his waking, the same qualities that he slept with now express themselves overtly as music. In the period of sleep, therefore, his qualities lie dormant. His personality returns to a seed form during sleep. Similarly, different types of persons, like a mathematician, sportsman, or philosopher, remain in their respective seed forms during their sleep. Upon awaking, all of them manifest themselves as their respective personalities. The seed forms comprise the individual vasanas. The vasanas remain unmanifest without any expression during sleep. The variety of vasanas express themselves as the variety of manifested individuals in the world.
So everybody make sense? Okay.
I have a quick question, if I may. I was under the impression that vasanas mean essentially your kind of desires, your innate desires. So I might be aware of my desires. So, for example, at an intellectual level, I can comprehend that. Or I could, perceive that I have got a desire for a particular thing or an object or something. So I'm just trying to kind of reconcile with what being said here and my understanding of it.
Okay, so you're here as an individual, you know that, and you've got a particular nature, each one of us, and we don't know often all the things about our nature, so we don't know our vasanas until it manifests. And when it manifests recurringly, we kind of get an impression that this is what we're about. This is our personality. So the chronology is vasana, thought, desire, action. That's the chronology of action. So it first manifests within as a thought. So we then draw our attention to that, and we can decide whether we want to pursue that thought or not. If there's something we can go through by knowledge, we can avoid getting into it. But if it's a strong, powerful part of our nature, it will push forward into a desire. It will keep recurring and compact itself, thought, to becoming a desire. And that desire will then propel itself into an action. Unless at some stage there's some intervention where we make an informed decision on that, which direction we want to head. So some actions may not be, some desires may not be great, and we have a capacity with intellect, if we grow that, to make a decision. I don't want to do that, in spite of something might be inherently a quality of one's personality traits. We want to get out of that. So we're not going to allow that vasana to keep percolating forward. So we got the opportunity to direct that. But essentially, when the vasanas are not showing up, we don't know what it is until it shows up. So when it shows up as a thought, we've got an opportunity to intervene there. And if the more we're informed with this type of knowledge, we can catch it at the thought stage and obliterate it if it's not very great for us or going in the direction we want to head. We can make an intelligent discrimination, say no, or we can even say no, not now, we'll do that later. We can make a distinction on that, what's pressing first. So your vasanas are unmanifest. Just for example, what you may do in this country in terms of your vasanas, certain things may manifest, but then you go into another country or another group of people, you may behave differently, and certain other vasanas come up which don't come up in a particular environment. So you may, when you go to, if you're asked to select a sport, right now you're not playing any sports, so no thoughts are on sports. But if you go to play a sport, you might inherently choose one thing oppose another. I would definitely choose tennis over football. That's how you just have a vasana, that's all. You know, it's like that. So there's definitely something there. So they're unmanifest. You only know how to handle them when they come up as a thought. Desires getting pressured to going into action. So the stronger your intellect, the stronger you can make the decision whether or not you want that to go into some action or not. One doesn't prefer to if one understands something's going to have a negative effect on us, is dangerous to us by doing it or taking it or thinking it, you probably cut it at the thought level. Unless there's a strong desire for something which you think you're going to get, you need a powerful intellect to cut it out. Keep the ethics in mind. Some people know the information, but they can't deal with it because the intellect's not strong enough. So the vasanas, coming back to it, are unmanifest. They're not totally in your control until they manifest. But the fact that when they manifest, they are in your control and purview to deal with, that's the beauty of this philosophy or knowledge. you're there to deal with it. Tim.
I'm struggling to understand these couple of sections. Is this last verse trying to suggest that in pursuit of a non-dualistic position that we are all the self, that it's the vasanas which are more fundamental than we as individuals? So the vasanas need some person to manifest themselves in. So we are just vehicles for the vasanas to manifest themselves in.
Yes.
So the vasanas are fundamental and we are just vehicles for the vasanas. And that helps our understanding that we are all one self.
I don't know if you feel it helps you understand, but yeah, that's the idea.
I understand.
So, may I ask a follow-up question? So it makes me wonder why we are different in our vasanas if we're just vehicles for the vasanas to manifest. What is it about us as individuals that make us manifest different vasanas then in that case?
So it's like, what is it about? You see, the vehicle is the body. Yeah, it's just a container for these thoughts, these vasanas to thoughts to manifest in the physical body. Yes, that's the container, the vehicle. So it's like asking, you see the rose and you see the jasmine. They both have fragrances, quite sweet fragrances. But then rose is not the jasmine and the jasmine's not the rose. They're different, but they're both flowers. So you're saying, how are we? It just is. That's what we can see. We've got different personalities. We've got opportunity. So if there's no difference in personality, when you're pitched up on looking at something universal, you don't make differences. But the fact there is a difference, there's a method to how to get away from that difference. Still being your personality, in fact. In actual fact, you can have, each person can have their own personality, because if there's a refined understanding, all the personalities come together and function well. It's when one wants to assert an ego a bit more than the other, it doesn't work. I think it's all acting as one. But when you have a view of something more universal, even relatively speaking, the personalities, that ego, that resistance to say my personality is better than yours or something like that, it gets a bit dissolved. So resolving or dissolving or fulfilling or whatever you want to call your vasanas is one's obligation. How you do that is the method we're employing here. If one doesn't employ a method of raising oneself from the mundane values, one keeps perpetuating desires, which keeps perpetuating more vasanas, which keeps you irritated, agitated, and stressed, which is really what we can obviously see at the manifestation we don't want. I don't think anybody wants stress. Anxiety, stress, worry, that sort of thing. We want to get away from it. So you've got to step it up to something. When it's very based at the physical level or material level of thinking, it's so based that there's so many differences in personality. It gets mixed up. It gets only focused on what somebody else has got or what you've got, or when you raise it to the emotional, the intellectual, you even see a bigger picture. You're not interested in what somebody else is wearing, or you're not fixated with having X, Y, Z. There's better things to think about. when you raise it on the spiritual level to something more universal, that goes out of the window. When you keep it on the spiritual level, all the other things come into play. You don't neglect, you refine, you enjoy, but you don't get attached to them. That's how you dissolve the vasana. It's like getting rid of the cloud, you see the sun. Vasanas are your cloud. Sun is always there. Dissolve the cloud by these methods. Get over the limitations of manifest, unmanifest, and get on to the job, is what it's about. Don't know if that's helpful. So let's get on to our vasanas. So pralaya, or creation, or destruction, really wouldn't worry about this. Just understand we're in a certain age where there's creation, destruction, sometimes more than others. Don't get into the nitty-gritty, get on with your evolution. Other things start to resolve themselves. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bhagavad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.